Multiple explosions, plumes of smoke going up, buildings reduced to rubble, all telltale signs of a surprise raid by the US in Venezuelan capital Caracas. US named it Operation Absolute Resolve, the most dramatic US operation against a head of state in the last few decades. Their target was to capture the man at Venezuela's helm, Nicolás Maduro, and his wife, Celia Flores. And capture they did. So, how did the US manage to carry out such an operation? Why did it capture Maduro and his wife? And what lies ahead for Venezuela? Let's connect the dots. Hours after the operation, US President Donald Trump made the big announcement.
Late last night and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault.
The US forces that executed the operation included members of its Delta Force, the US Army's most elite counterterrorism and direct action unit. So, with Maduro captured, who will run Venezuela now? Listen to Trump again.
So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious, because that's what we're all about.
Are you saying that Secretary Hegseth and Rubio are going to be running Venezuela, and will you be sending in U.S. military troops to provide?
Team that's working with the people of Venezuela to make sure that we have Venezuela right. Because for us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro, and right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn in as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said, we'll do whatever you need. I think she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice.
Trump was talking about Delcy Rodríguez, who was Maduro's vice president. After Maduro's capture, she was sworn in as Venezuela's acting president by the country's Supreme Court. While Trump said she has agreed to toe the American line, she struck a defiant note in public, saying there is only one president in Venezuela and his name is Nicolás Maduro.
Todo dentro de la Constitución.
Everything within the Constitution, we learned it from Commander Chavez. In the face of adversities, in the face of coups d'etat, in the face of oil sabotages, we are ready to defend Venezuela. We are ready to defend our natural resources that must be for national development.
But by Sunday night, Rodríguez was striking a softer tone than she previously had, calling for cooperation with the US. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio claimed that the US won't take a day-to-day role in governing Venezuela, but would maintain an existing oil quarantine around the country to prevent the entry and exit of oil tankers under US sanctions. So how did the US manage to pull off such a raid in Caracas? Months of preparation went into it. Execution was intended a few days earlier, but since the weather was not clear due to cloud cover, it was postponed every day for a few days until the D-Day of January 3rd, 2026. Finally, President Trump gave the order after a relaxed evening in his Mar-a-Lago club in Florida with these words: "Good luck and Godspeed." What followed was a 2-hour and 20-minute mission by air, land, and sea that stunned many in Washington and around the world. Trump watched a live stream of the operation as it unfolded.
Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night.
Airstrikes around Caracas were used as cover for the extraction operation. When the special forces made it to his room at his residence within the Fuerte Tiona military complex in central Caracas, Maduro made a dash to a safe room nearby but was unable to close its door. For months, US spies had been monitoring Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro's every move.
After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets, in early December, our force was set pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise, and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel so, as the president said, they could be brought to justice.
After their capture, the Maduro couple was flown to Iwo Jima, a US warship near the Venezuelan coast. From there, the couple was flown to Joint Base Andrews near Washington, D.C. Then they were arraigned in a New York federal court and then transferred to the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn for pretrial detention. Maduro and his wife made their initial court appearance in Manhattan Federal Court. Both pleaded not guilty to narco-terrorism and other charges. There, Maduro said, "I am still president of my country." If convicted, Maduro could get a minimum 20 years in prison and potentially life imprisonment. Meanwhile, some Democrats in the US Congress objected to the US operation being carried out without notifying the Congress. Unlike US intervention in Iraq in 2003, US Congress was not notified this time. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio defended the Trump administration's decision. He said, and I quote, "It wasn't necessary because this is not an invasion. We didn't occupy a country. This was an arrest operation. This is a law enforcement operation. He was arrested on the ground in Venezuela by FBI agents, read his rights, and removed from the country." So now let's see what Maduro has been charged with. Maduro and his wife were indicted in the Southern District of New York. They have been charged with conspiracy to commit narco-terrorism and import cocaine, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices against the US. But did you know this is not the first time the US carried out an operation like this? In 1989, US forces captured General Manuel Noriega in Panama, his home country. He had been Panama's military dictator for 6 years. There are other striking similarities in both the episodes. Like Maduro, Noriega too was accused of participating in a large-scale operation to smuggle drugs into the United States, and both captures happened on January 3rd. Noriega was tried and convicted in 1991 and given a 40-year prison sentence. A critical factor in his failed defense was that US courts refused to consider the legality of the capture itself. That could serve as a precedent for US law enforcement. Also, if pushed to justify Maduro's arrest, prosecutors may point to a 1989 memo from the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel's William Barr. It claims that a president had inherent constitutional authority to order the FBI to take people into custody in foreign countries, even if it violated international law. So the Panavian dictator's case may prove to be a guide for the prosecutors, defense attorneys, and judges now involved in the case against Maduro. So how is the world reacting to Maduro's capture? The Latin American and Caribbean region is tense after Trump threatened similar action against countries in the region like Cuba, Colombia, and Mexico if they don't fall in line. He also says the US is not afraid of boots on the ground in Venezuela if its interests are threatened. A group of 6 Ibero-American countries, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Mexico, Uruguay, and Spain, have since issued a joint statement saying the US actions contradicted the fundamental principles of international law and respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of independent nations. In an emergency session of the UN Security Council, deep divisions were seen between the US on one side and Venezuela and its backers on the other. No resolution or formal outcome was adopted due to veto powers of permanent members. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres stressed respect for sovereignty, territorial integrity, and international law. Earlier, Russia, China, Iran, and Cuba condemned the US operation. But Trump's ally in Argentina, Javier Milei, supported Trump, whereas UK, EU, and Spain did a balancing act. India described the developments in Venezuela a matter of deep concern. It called upon all concerned to address issues through dialogue and ensure peace and stability in the region. Let's now dig deeper into Maduro's past. Maduro rose to prominence under the leadership of left wing President Hugo Chavez. He succeeded him as president in 2013. He has been at odds with Trump over the arrival of hundreds of thousands of Venezuelan migrants in the US and the alleged movement of drugs into the US from Venezuela, in particular fentanyl and cocaine. Trump has designated two Venezuelan drug gangs, Tren de Aragua and Cartel de los Soles, as foreign terrorist organizations and has alleged that the latter was led by Maduro himself. Maduro vehemently denies being a cartel leader and has accused the US of using its war on drugs as an excuse to depose him and get its hands on Venezuelan oil. In recent months, US forces carried out more than 2 dozen strikes in international waters on boats they allege were used to traffic drugs. In those strikes, more than 100 people have been killed. So the question is, what lies ahead for Venezuela? Venezuelans are apprehensive about their future.
We are living with this uncertainty to see what will happen, what the directives will be, so we can continue with life.
Remember, Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserve, but it struggles to produce even around 1% of global oil production. That's because Venezuela's oil infrastructure is in bad shape and its oil is under sanctions. Also, Venezuelan oil is extra heavy, so processing it is both polluting and expensive. But if US based oil companies are given greater access in Venezuela, then that could help gradually revive Venezuela's oil industry, though the revival may take years and cost billions. Here's Trump talking about what he intends to do with Venezuelan oil.
We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground. We're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend.
What's more, if the US were to lift sanctions on Venezuelan oil later, it could restart oil sales and bring in billions. As per reports quoting US officials, for now, Trump is prioritizing quickly establishing a pliant interim government in Venezuela, bringing administrative stability and repairing the country's oil infrastructure over an immediate turn to democracy. While Trump has brushed off concerns, he was repeating the mistakes of American adventurism abroad, like in Iraq and Afghanistan. His Donro doctrine, as he puts it, now faces its first test in Venezuela. Venezuela's future hangs in uncertainty. As the country navigates this pivotal transition, the world watches for signs of stability or strife. Over 30 people were killed and several others abducted when gunmen attacked a village in northern Nigeria. The attack happened at Kasuwan Daji village in Niger state on Saturday evening. Armed men stormed the village market, opened fire on residents, burned stalls and houses, and looted food supplies. Witnesses say the gunmen arrived on motorcycles and shot indiscriminately, sending people running for cover. Villagers put the death toll at 37 and fear it could rise further as some villagers are still missing. Survivors say they are too scared to return and recover the bodies. Villagers also say security forces did not arrive for hours, contradicting police claims that officers had already been deployed. According to villagers, the attackers had been moving around nearby communities for nearly a week before striking. The violence was not limited to one place. Similar raids were reported in Aguara and Borgu, suggesting a coordinated wave of attacks. And most importantly, this deadly assault came just days after a US military strike on ISIS terrorist camps in Nigeria. This highlights how armed outfits are wreaking havoc in Nigeria. To understand where this is happening, let's look at the map. Nigeria is located in West Africa. With a population of more than 220 million, it is Africa's most populous country and also its largest economy, driven by oil production, agriculture, and services. Despite this, large parts of the country struggle with weak governance and limited security presence. The attack took place in Niger state in north central Nigeria. The area is largely rural, with vast forests and poor road networks. These conditions make it difficult for security forces to respond quickly and easy for armed groups to hide. Now, who were the gunmen? The attackers are locally known as bandits. They are armed criminal gangs. They are not insurgents fighting for political power and not driven by religion or ideology. Their primary motive is money. Bandits target villages, markets, highways, and schools. They kill, loot, and kidnap people for ransom, often choosing places where state presence is minimal. The Kasuwan Daji attack happened close to Papiri, where more than 300 school children and teachers were abducted from a Catholic school in November. That incident forced the authorities to shut schools across Niger state as an emergency measure. Although those students were later rescued, fear continues to grip local communities. The Kasuwan Daji killings are part of a wider pattern. Across northwestern and central Nigeria, bandit attacks have increased sharply over the past few years. Mass abductions, once rare, have become frequent. Markets have been destroyed, villages emptied, and thousands of people displaced. Just one day before the Kasuwan Daji attack, Niger state authorities had announced the phased reopening of schools after months of closures caused by kidnapping fears. The attack immediately raised questions about whether it is clear for children to return to classrooms.
All the children were taken, even the smallest one. All 5 of my children were there. Nothing remains.
To understand why this violence continues, we need to look at the deeper causes. Many bandits come from the Fulani ethnic group who traditionally rely on cattle herding for survival. For generations, they moved livestock across long distances in search of grazing land and water. But this way of life has been under growing pressure. Climate change has reduced available pasture. Population growth has intensified competition over land. Clashes between farmers and herders have become more common. At the same time, poverty, unemployment, and lack of education have worsened in rural areas. For some young men, crime has become a faster way to survive than traditional livelihoods. Another key factor is the easy availability of guns. After the collapse of Libya in 2011, following the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi, large quantities of weapons flooded the Sahel region. Assault rifles moved across porous borders and ended up in criminal hands across West Africa, including Nigeria. This transformed small criminal groups into heavily armed gangs capable of carrying out large-scale attacks. Bandits usually move in large groups on motorcycles, allowing them to strike quickly and escape before security forces can respond. They often hide in vast forest reserves and national parks, which serve as natural shelters beyond the reach of regular patrols. In the Kasuwan Daji attack, the gunmen are believed to have emerged from forest areas along the Cape district. There is no central leadership. Each gang operates independently, often linked by family or local ties and loyal to its own commander. Some gangs fight each other, while others travel across state lines to carry out kidnappings and raids. Nigeria's government officially designated bandits as terrorists in 2022. Security forces have launched multiple operations and bounties have been placed on known gang leaders such as Ado Eleru and Bello Turji. Despite these efforts, progress has been limited. Nigeria's security forces are overstretched. The country is dealing with criminal gangs in the northwest, Islamist insurgents in the northeast, land conflicts in central regions, and separatist unrest in the southeast. With more than 250 ethnic groups and deep regional divisions, maintaining security across such a vast country remains a major challenge. Kidnapping for ransom has become one of the main sources of income for bandits. Although paying ransom is illegal, families often feel they have no choice. In some areas, entire communities are forced to make regular payments to armed groups in exchange for temporary safety. Disturbingly, younger bandits are still in their teens. They have begun posting videos on social media platforms flaunting weapons, motorcycles, and ransom money. Nigeria's bandit crisis did not emerge overnight. It is the result of years of weak governance, rural neglect, poverty, climate stress, uncontrolled weapons, and a lack of effective security in remote areas. When the state fails to protect people and provide opportunities, armed groups step in to fill the vacuum. And the attack on Kasuwan Daji is just a reminder of that. That's all in this edition of Connecting the Dots. We'll see you in the next episode with more raging issues. Until then, it's a goodbye from all of us in the Delhi newsroom. This is Manuel signing off. Take care and stay safe.